Hello, welcome back to the Gothic Literary Society. I'm Charlotte Leisman, and today we are talking about ghosts. So we're talking about the ways in which ghosts have been used in Gothic writing and 5 ways that you can use ghosts in your writing. So not long ago we looked at the trope of vampires, also a very popular Gothic trope, and we looked at the ways in which vampires have been used historically and ways that we can incorporate vampires into our writing today. And we're going to do the same with ghosts. So my goal is to look at any number of different Gothic tropes and to look at the reason for their existence so that we understand a bit more about how they support Gothic themes and then also how they're applicable still today. So let's get into it. So if we look at the trope of ghosts. So ghosts have been used in a number of different ways, but if you look at them all from a higher level, you can see that they are used in one very similar way as well. So first of all, let's look at the Castle of Otranto. Okay, so we arguably believe that that is the first of all of the Gothic books ever written by Horace Walpole. So it is a book in which there is something of a ghost. It is in the form of Alfonso's helmet. So as I've said before, the Castle of Otranto, which we give it a lot of credit for having begun the Gothic genre, and yet it is in many ways very awkward. Well, in the beginning of the story, there is a giant helmet which falls upon the young man, Conrad, who is supposed to marry the young woman, Isabella. Well, of course, this was going to happen regardless, because it's really Conrad's father, Manfred, who wants Isabella for himself. Manfred is married, but he wants to take his son's fiancée for his own bride as well and get rid of his current wife. So if you look at Alfonso's helmet, who crushes Manfred's son so that Isabella cannot marry him, we can say that that is, and it's presented in as if it were like a ghostly form, that we could say very much that that is symbolic of either Manfred's intentions toward Isabella or Isabella's conscious or subconscious knowledge of her father-in-law-to-be's intentions toward her. So in a sense, that ghost plays a role in making her own fear and knowledge of his intentions manifest. Second of all, we have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. So if you've read The Woman in Black, you know that obviously the titular character is a ghost. So this is a woman who suffered a very great loss a long time ago, and she is now, her manifestation is considered to be a harbinger of loss for other people. So when people witness this woman in black, they know that they are about to lose a child. So in a lot of ways, the woman in black is symbolic of the kind of loss and the kind of great tragedy that we can't necessarily reason. Third of all, we could look at, say, Wuthering Heights. So we recently looked at a book review of Wuthering Heights, and we know that Catherine's ghost haunts Heathcliff from start to finish. Well, Catherine's ghost can be said to be in any number of things, but for sure she is a representation of Heathcliff's unhealthy affection and obsession with Catherine, and also his undying love, as warped as that love may be, his undying love for her. Fourth of all, we could look at, say, Rebecca. So on the surface we might say, oh, there's no ghost in Rebecca, but in a lot of ways there is a metaphorical ghost from start to finish, and that of course is the titular character Rebecca, who is no longer alive as of the start of the novel, but she is haunting Mrs. De Winter, the new Mrs. De Winter, from start to finish. Her presence becomes a haunting presence for Mrs. De Winter, and it symbolizes her own comparison to who she believes Rebecca was, and also her own sense of inferiority to Rebecca. And then last but not least, of course, we could look at Turn of the Screw. So in the Turn of the Screw, the new governess who comes to take care of these 2 young children, they are haunted all three of them are haunted by the ghosts of their prior governess, Miss Jessup, and the prior gardener, Mr. Peter Quint, both of whom died under very mysterious and suspicious situations. So in that book, those characters, the ghosts themselves, were actually playing a role in the loss of the children's innocence, and in a lot of ways the manifestation of those ghosts are symbolizing the protagonist. We're never given her name, but the new governess's fear that she won't be able to protect the children from any subsequent loss of innocence. So if you look at all 5 of those examples, they all look very different on the surface, and yet they all boil down to one very common thing, and that is that all of those ghosts are making the internal state of one of the main characters very, very manifest. So in that way, the trope of ghosts is one that plays a very, very direct role in showing us what's going on within the main characters. So as a 6th example, I mentioned in a brief video recently that I had written a book, and in that book I use a ghost, and in the book I have a main character, and she is haunted very early on in the book by her long dead aunt, a woman she never met. And this woman is on the surface pushing her towards uncovering the truth. So the truth of all of their family secrets, and the truth of also who she really is and what she's hiding from herself. So symbolically, the ghost is playing a role in showing us what's going on the inside of this protagonist. So you get to see the protagonist state of herself that she presents to the world right alongside all of that which she is hiding from the world, the part of her that she has partly repressed but also is unwilling to face. That would be manifest in this ghost. So ghosts really can take a tangible form and show us a lot of what's going on that would otherwise be very hidden. So let's make that like really specific and look at 5 ways today that you could use ghosts in your writing. So first of all, a ghost could represent the past. So say for instance you have a character who had a past event that he has not been willing to face or not been willing to deal with. So there's some unreconciled portion of his past, and we'll keep that to more of an event based. You'll see why in a minute. So he's being haunted to an increasing fashion by this ghost who won't leave him alone, and over time we discover that that ghost is really symbolic of his past that won't let him go and that won't allow him to rest until he faces it. Second of all, it could be a relationship. So this could be from any number of angles. So say you have a great loss and your character suffered some great loss in the past. So for instance, that's what we see in Edgar Allan Poe's poem The Raven. So the raven plays a role like what your ghost could in reminding the protagonist of all that he lost. And the same with Catherine's ghost, of course, in Wuthering Heights. Or it could be a relationship that went horribly wrong. So perhaps the ghost represents all that happened in the past that the character did, or something that transpired in the relationship. So it's a little bit different from what we just talked about a minute ago with the past. So with respect to a relationship, we might focus more on the relationship, whereas when we talked about the past, we might have been focused perhaps more on event. Third of all, you could have a choice or a decision. So perhaps your character needs to do something or needs to make some kind of sacrifice, and perhaps he's been able to avoid this because he's been able to skirt out from under, I don't know, it could be responsibilities that he's not owning up to. It could be any number of things. Well, this ghost could be a manifestation of all of those things that he has been unwilling to take responsibility for, or has been unwilling to accept some form of decision making, or to own up to something that he needs to do or decide in his life. So fourth of all, the ghost could also also represent a psychological abnormality. So perhaps your character appears to be a very common, very normal person on the surface, and yet as the story goes on, perhaps the ghost who is haunting her begins to act in more and more deviant ways, and perhaps over time as the story devolves, the readers all of a sudden sense that the ghost is actually some tangible manifestation of what is going on psychologically within your main character. Now, that would be really, really interesting. And then fifth of all, it could be some form of spiritual question. So spiritual questions and the things that we examine spiritually are sometimes the most difficult to do within a story, because in order for your character to really voice those sorts of questions, it would be difficult with other human characters within the book, because that kind of dialogue can sometimes become very cumbersome and awkward over the duration of an entire book. Of course, that's not universally true. So we see in Interview with the Vampire, or even The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice, she manages to broach a lot of very spiritual questions between Louis and Lestat and some other characters over to actually continues on throughout the series, but she's able to do that throughout the book, but sometimes that can be very, very difficult. So one thing that ghosts can do is a ghost can really take on a tangible form that represents that question itself. So as the character relates to the ghost over the duration of the book, readers can get a very real sense for how the character is facing whatever this troubling spiritual question is, and how he's working through whatever it is that he's unable to reconcile. So those are just 5 examples. Of course, I'm sure there are more out there, but ghosts really take what is going on within characters and they really allow them to grow legs and walk around. They really show us what's going on behind the scenes, whether that's a past or a relationship or a decision or psychological or spiritual matters. So use your ghosts with a keen eye for your Gothic theme. So marry them obviously with wanting to make your theme more manifest, and you're going to have a really, really good application of a really interesting trope. So I hope you go out there and enjoy your ghosts. And also, if you know of some other Gothic books that you've read in which the author has utilized ghosts as a trope and has done so well, let us know, and I would love to hear more about what you're reading. So that's it for today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. That way you'll be notified every time I release a new video. I post videos on Fridays, so until next time, stay undead, my friends.